guys, it's great to have you here. Thanks for being a part of our service. Today is Mother's Day. I hope you guys figured that out by now. If you're a husband here and you don't know today's Mother's Day, we need prayer for you, all right? We'll get the anointing oil and douse it on you. But hopefully you guys are ready for Mother's Day. I even made a few calls to some of our young married guys that their wives did not have kids yet and said, you know what? It wouldn't hurt you to just go ahead and get them something, all right? It wouldn't hurt you. So hopefully that's words of wisdom. If you haven't bought her anything yet, then maybe when you guys get home and she takes a little nap and relaxes, you can take off over to Quick Trip and pick her up something, okay? Get her a gift card or something. No, you need to go somewhere nice, like Jared or something like that. I don't know, but figure something out. But let's just celebrate moms today, and I'm thankful to have you guys here. We've got a gift for moms that we'll be giving you guys on your way out. They'll have them there at the door, and it's a special gift that Lisa put together for you guys, and we want all of you to have it. I've got a couple of really, really awesome moms here, not just my awesome wife, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but my mama is back here, back on the back row. She sits back there as far away from me as she can, hoping I won't tell stories on her. But I'm going to this morning. I've got a wonderful mom, and it's just my morning to celebrate her. And I'm so thankful for her. And, I was thinking this morning and last night as I was just reflecting on Mother's Day, my mom was a model. Now, you can look at her and tell that she could have been a model, but she was. She was a model mom. She was just absolutely perfect in almost everything she did. She got up and cooked us breakfast in the morning. Did you know that moms did that kind of stuff? Did you? She got up and cooked breakfast in the morning, and she took care of every need that we had in our lives. My mom has to make sure that everybody is fed and full. She has to do that. So when we sit at the table, many times mom's not there because she's got the food on the table and she's still in the kitchen trying to finish up a few things. And she'd say, just go on, you guys go ahead and eat. I'll be there in a second. And she wouldn't show up till the end of the meal because she's in there making more stuff because someone needed more gravy or something wasn't just right. And whenever we sit down at the table, whenever we got finished eating, she's looking around to see who needed more food. And she would give you the food off of her plate if she could. And she would many times just to make sure that everybody was full. The other thing I remember about my mom so specifically was that she was a woman of prayer. I can remember lots of times at night before we'd go to bed, and Mom would get all of us kids in a room and she would pray with us. And we would kneel down at the bed and she would just pray. And I just remember hearing her praying and hearing her words of prayer for us. I remember my parents downstairs as I was a teenager, and they would pray at night. And I would hear them down there as I'm trying to sleep. My mom and dad are downstairs praying and calling our names out in prayer. That makes a huge difference. We don't see that too much anymore in our homes. But when you have this kind of upbringing, I have no excuses in my life. It was my mom who helped me find the right wife because every other girl I ever brought home, all she had to do was this. Now watch, see if you can, here, have to take my glass. All she did was this. Did you see that? For those of you, if that's real subtle, watch my eyebrow right here. I've got the gift. That's all she had to do. It was like Spock was channeling through her or something. She just gave me the eyebrow, and whenever she would give me that eyebrow, I knew that this was over. When I met Lisa, I wouldn't bring her around the family for months. I just said, listen, I'm dating her, okay? I want to make up my mind before Mom gives me the eyebrow. And so before Mom could ever give me the eyebrow, I finally made a good choice and asked her to marry me before my parents ever met her. No, it wasn't that drastic. But I remember, I'm not even preaching this morning, and I'm preaching. I remember when Mom went through her cancer treatments. And I remember going up and staying in the hospital with her as she had going through surgery and that sort of thing. And I remember being in the hospital and staying the night with her there at St. Francis. And I told her that night that I was in love with Lisa and I was probably going to ask her to marry me. And I didn't even look to see if I had that eyebrow going. I kept my head like this and I figured I would just say it real quickly. But she didn't. She gave me her blessing upon that, and I knew that that was the right person for me, and I'm so thankful that I did. Now, Mama, I love you. I know you can't hear everything I'm saying back there, but you feel the love, all right? You feel it. And we love her very much. And now I'll turn it to my other mom. I feel like sometimes she feels like I'm her child sometimes, I think, as much as she's got to take care of me. But I've got an awesome wife, and you guys know that. I'm so proud of her. I'm proud of the commitment that she's made to God. I'm proud that she can lead my family, and she can even lead me. There are many times in my life that I ask my wife to pray for me because I need her prayers, and I know of no one else that has power in her prayers like Lisa does. She's someone that people call with things that they're going through. She carries burdens that I don't even know about sometimes. But I'm so thankful that God has given me a woman of God that can be my helpmate and has far exceeded me spiritually, I feel, but is my biggest hero. And why do I do this every Sunday? I'm not going to do it. There's no one I would rather get old with or spend the rest of my life with than Lisa Freeman Goins. And I want you to welcome her. She comes this morning.
He's a good man. Oh. Before I was barely out of bed this morning, I had Starbucks coffee and a breakfast sandwich. And I was thinking this day is starting out pretty good. So he really is wonderful. Okay, so I have a new routine, I think, for the day before Mother's Day that I might do every year if I can remember. Because yesterday I went to Target, and I have to say kudos to the dads out there. Because it was so much fun watching all the last-minute dads at Target with their kids, just going up and down the aisles and trying, is this what you want to get your mom? No, I don't think she's going to like this. And like kids would have the ugliest things in their hands, and the dads would be trying to steer them the other way. And there were meltdowns in the aisles, and I'm like, moms, go without your kids to Target the day before Mother's Day and just enjoy the show. And you can see that they, for one day, put up with what you do the other 364 days of the year. But it's worth the trip. It was so much fun. Okay, so lest you think that I am a mom who had it all together, I realized that there is just a very few amount of people in here who knew me when my kids were small. So I uncovered what I would consider to be pretty much a normal Mother's Day picture for our family. So if you guys could show that. This is us. So let me caption this picture, because this would be the first one where little Kelson had joined the family, the fourth one. So 4 kids born within 3 years. So I can tell you exactly what happened here, because Kelson about every 20 minutes threw up. He just spit up. I was never clean as a mother. So he had just thrown up, and Callie is saying, Dad, you know that spit up is on your shoe. He is saying, yeah, I know. And Kelson's thinking, ooh, like cool, like our Braxton is, because he always did. And Brooklyn's thinking, is my bow straight? Do I still look cute for this picture? This is us. And I'm not sure if we ever got very much of a better picture than that for years and years and years. So that's just fun. So you guys, I know you guys look at me and you think, oh, Lisa, her kids are grown and she's got it all together, but that simply just isn't the truth. Okay, it still is not the truth. I'm going to read you guys this scripture. It's in 1 Peter chapter 4, and it starts in verse 8, and it says this: above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality one to another without grumbling. Each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve other people, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. Father, we just lift our time to you this morning. Father, I just pray on this day, on this Mother's Day, that women, mothers, everyone that's here, Father, would just feel your presence and hear a word from you today. Father, let your word penetrate our hearts in such a way that only you can do. And we receive that with full expectation this morning. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Okay, so some of you have seen that I have been posting this week about some squad goals. So I want to talk to you this morning. I've had this on my heart for a little bit of time because I am fully convinced that everybody needs a squad. And so you might say, why do you think I do? Why do you think I need a squad? One reason I can tell you is that the opposite of a squad is isolation. And isolation really is not good for anybody. Actually, too much time alone can sometimes make you a little weird. If we're gonna be honest, or maybe it's just like too much time alone with kids can make you a little bit weird. So my days oftentimes would start out pretty good until I arrived at the breakfast table, and then kids would start coming in one at a time, just like, I'll have some cereal, Mom. Can I have some cereal? Yes, of course you can have some cereal. And the next one would come in and they'd be like, I don't want any cereal. I want a Pop-Tart. Okay, I guess I can give you a Pop-Tart. And the next one would come in and say, hey, I want some pancakes. And I'm thinking, who do you think I am? Like your nanny? What, can I get you a side of bacon with that? Like things that have never been said in my house would be can I get you a side of bacon? Because that's not my job. And then Brooklyn would make her way in and she'd be like, hey, I don't like pancakes. I want some waffles. Give me some waffles. Like, what's the difference between a pancake and a waffle? Except the shape of it. It's the same exact ingredients, maybe with like one extra egg. But no, she doesn't like a pancake. She has to have a waffle. And that's the point where I say, everybody's getting cereal, and oh, by the way, we're out of milk. Here you go, with your dry cups, and everybody gets one and eat it, and you're gonna be happy about it. I mean, we can start our day fine, and like Barney is playing on a loop, and this is one thing when you're a mom that you might have gotten a little bit weird, is when you find yourself watching kids shows when there's no kids in the room. So how many in here remember the Barney days? Do I have some? Like, the breakfast time starts out as like oh, here's your cereal, I love you, and you love me, and we're a happy family with a great big hug. And by the time they're done, I'm like, clean up, everybody, everybody do your share and clean up. And Callie would be there like, Mom, that's not how the song goes. And I'm like, I don't care. And then in that moment, like your foot steps on an unseen Lego when you're barefoot, there is nothing like the kind of pain when you don't realize it, but your foot goes full force down on a Lego and it will take you down. And you're like, get out of the kitchen! And you just scare your kids away. It'll make you a little weird if that's all you have every day in your life. You're gonna have to find some time to get out and around other people. Okay, so Brooklyn and Kelson are my two kids that I have here this morning, so I have to tell a little story about them. So Brooklyn and Kelson were definitely, and really still are, the very social ones in our family. And the two of them together loved to dress up. Their favorite thing in the world. Brooklyn was never without a princess dress. She was never without a costume, never without something over her clothes. She just wasn't that way. A lot of you girls wear the fin cannons. You have girls like that. She was never without that. Well, Kelson, he loved to dress up too. He had capes and he had, like armor and swords and lightsabers, and he just didn't go play with anyone without something else like that on. So this day I can remember Brooklyn was like, Mom, can we dress up? Can we dress up? I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Hey, can I dress up in your closet? I'm like, buy me like an extra 10. So yeah, go ahead. And so Kelson, like seeing the opportunity, I remember his eyes got kind of wide, like, we're gonna dress up in the closet? And you know how kids are when one is on their way and the other one realizes it, they're like on their way too. And I thought, okay, this is gonna be cute. Because he's like gonna come out, dressed up in Kelly's stuff. I wonder what he's gonna get into and find in that closet to dress himself up in. So they're off and they're doing their thing for a little while and then the doorbell rang. Okay, so if you ever wonder where your kids are in the house, all you really have to do is ring the doorbell and everybody comes running because they think it's like one of their friends that's gonna play or Nani is here or whatever, but they get pretty excited when the doorbell rings. So the doorbell rings this morning and I open it and it's like a UPS guy and he's there to give me a delivery that I have to sign for and he's looking at me kind of funny and I'm thinking, what? They call this loungewear. Even though, I'm like still in my pajamas and it's almost noon, but it's like loungewear now. It's not really pajamas. And so he's just kind of looking at me funny and I'm like, yeah, I know. I got 4 kids. I gave birth to them within 3 years. What have you done today? You know, with that kind of look. And he's just kind of smiling at me. And I'm like, oh yeah, my kids are behind me because they've been playing dress up. And the doorbell rang. So they're all there behind me, and his eyes are kind of like that. And he's just kind of like, you know, behind me. I'm like, yeah, I know. Oh, I didn't know that this was behind me. So here is Kelson, who emerged from playing dress up, but he did not visit his dad's side of the closet. He didn't even visit my side of the closet. Kelson had gotten in my room and gotten in a drawer and pulled out nearly every undergarment I owned and was wearing them all over his body, on his head and his arms and over his legs. And I mean, it's not like he was just wearing this stuff on the top of the drawer. He dug deep and found stuff that I didn't even know I had and things that I really should no longer own. And he was wearing them. And I'm like, yeah, isolation or time with a bunch of kids. It makes your life a little weird. Good day. Shut the door. That was the life in the Goins house and with the Goins kids. You know, I think that sometimes what I found with myself, and I wonder if it's true for any of you, if you have kids, or maybe you don't, maybe it's just you find a way to make your excuses, but I learned to use my kids as a shield and a reason to stay isolated. Oh, I'm too busy. Oh, we've just got so much to do. And then you find yourself before long purposefully filling up your schedule with things to do for your kids so that you can avoid putting yourself out there for other people. So if you stay in your bubble and stay busy with your kids, then you can make all the excuses you want to. You know, it's like those sweatpants get a little bit too comfortable sometimes. But here's the problem with spending too much time alone in isolation and by yourself and thinking that you don't need anybody. And this is probably more for a generation today. You're like, well, I'm gonna be okay. I've got social media. Yeah, that's really gonna help. You can start out having fun with it and oh, look what so-and-so is doing and look what so-and-so is doing. And before long, everybody's houses look a little bit cleaner. Everybody's vacations look a little bit nicer, and your friends' kids are not wearing your underwear in any of the pictures. But when you become too comfortable in isolation, it's what becomes familiar to you. And we will always be the type of people that will gravitate to the familiar and to the comfortable. So much so that when you find yourself within a crowd or in a group of people or in places like right here in church where you need to be, this becomes the uncomfortable place for you. This is where you begin to feel alone in a crowded room because you're so much more comfortable being by yourself. So let me just shrink back to where I know it's comfortable and find a place to settle. You know what God helped me realize is, wouldn't it be a shame if I wanted to do more in your life, but you were so content to settle for less because you needed to be comfortable? Because you needed to be comfortable. So the antidote to getting out of some isolation and moving yourself beyond what's comfortable is a squad. So I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about the squad that you need. And here's why. The enemy knows that we are just stronger together. So if he can keep you isolated and comfortable feeling like that, he will make sure he keeps you uncomfortable around other people that you need to be around. And he doesn't want us that way. But the squad that I see in the Bible is the squad that you guys need. And it is quite the group. I'm gonna show you a deceiver. I'm gonna show you the town prostitute. I'm gonna show you a foreigner and the adulteress. I'm here to tell you, this is not your mama's squad. It is not your mother's squad. There's no perfection here. There's no knitting needles and we're sitting around and we're all fine and we're happy. Oh, I'm blessed. I'm too blessed to be stressed. I'm good. Life is good. No, life isn't always good. let me talk to you first for just a minute. Let me give you kind of the lowdown of this squad and who they are. The first one in our squad, the deceiver, it's Tamar. And you have to go back like in the Bible to find her. Not just old Bible, like old Bible, because she's all the way back in Genesis. So Tamar was the wife that Judah chose for his oldest son. Judah was one of the brothers that sold his brother Joseph into slavery, and then he got out of town. He got out of town and married a Canaanite wife and then had to find wives for his sons. Now, I don't like much of what Judah did, but I don't mind the premise of finding wives for your sons. My sons haven't quite been on board with that. Braxton is just not okay with me choosing him a wife at this point. But Judah chose a wife for his oldest son, Er. He chose Tamar. And so the Bible tells us that Er was a wicked man in the eyes of the Lord. Tamar's only job, pretty much back in this day, was to bear children for this family, more specifically a son to carry on Judah's name. And it says Er was wicked in the eyes of the Lord. He did not allow Tamar an option of bearing a son, and so it says the Lord struck him dead. So then Tamar was given to the next son, Onan, because she needed to bear a son for the family. And the Bible says that Onan was wicked in the eyes of the Lord. He didn't give Tamar even an option of having a son, and the Lord struck him dead. Like, guys, you need to be glad you weren't alive in like old Bible times, because just a little bit of evil and you're gone. So Judah is so worried now because both of his sons are dead. He's got one more son, Shelah, but he's young. He's not the age yet where he can marry and have children. So he takes Tamar and he says, Tamar, you just go back and live in your father's house. I'll come and get you when the time is right for Shelah so that you can be back within our family where you belong, and then you can bear children. He sends Tamar off, and she's there, and she's there, and she's there. She's had to settle in and get comfortable because the Bible talks about how many years had gone by and Shelah had grown up, but still Tamar was comfortable back in her father's house. And so she's the deceiver because she disguised herself and she tricks Judah so that she takes this risk at her great peril and even her life at stake. If she's found out, she would have been stoned. But she does that so that she can bear a child in the family name like she was supposed to do. But she did it in such a deceiving way, like not ways that we would condone or ever think about as an okay thing in this time. But when the twist of the story is when it was done and when she became pregnant, Judah said, here is Tamar. She is more righteous than I am. She's more righteous than I am. Okay, so our next one that we have in the story is, hang on, let me get to, I want to go in order. Okay, she's our town prostitute. Okay, so you have to go forward. She's still old Bible, but you can scoot forward. She's not old Bible. She's like old Bible because she's in the story of Joshua. Tamar is, or Rahab is the town prostitute in the city of Jericho. And she's in with the king and the king's men. And so this is where the spies that are coming to spy out the land of Jericho before they're going to march around the city, that's where they're going to come in and check it out to see they're ready to overtake it. And they find themselves in Rahab's house, the house of the town prostitute. And just about the time that they find themselves in her house, the king's men are knocking on the door because the king has said, hey, go check out those men that have come into Rahab's house. Everybody knows Rahab. They're in her house. Go check them out. I think they're here to spy out our land. And so the king's men are knocking at her door and the spies are in her house. So she can go with what she knows, which is the king, her city, these people. She's got these strange spies in her house, and the men at the door are saying, hey, give up the men. We know we're here. And she's saying, what? She says they've already gone out. They were here, but they're gone. In fact, she had hidden them. So what's amazing about Rahab, and in that moment, is what she was telling the spies is this. She says, I know who you are. I know that you're Israelites, and I have heard about your God. I heard about how he split the Red Sea. I heard about how he's annihilated your enemies and they've fallen at your feet. So she had one thing that she knew, which was her life, her family, her city of Jericho. And on the other side, She had only what she heard. And in that one moment, she had a second to trust her gut, her instincts, and what it might tell her. Do I go with what I know and what I'm comfortable with, or do I trust my gut and make a decision and go with this God and these men that I have only heard about? And that's exactly what Rahab did. Our next squad that you need in your life is Ruth. And she's the foreigner here. And she's actually the only one that hasn't made it into these books. So these books that I have here of these girls in these squads, one of them ends up in Bad Girls of the Bible, the book that was written by Liz Curtis Higgs. Two of them actually end up in really bad girls of the Bible. I'm telling you, this is still the squad you need. Ruth is the only one that didn't make it in these two books of these women that I'm bringing you today. She was the foreigner. She was the one that Naomi and Elimelech, they were in Bethlehem and they were starving. There wasn't much food there, so they left and went to the city to live in Moab. And Elimelech has got to get wives for his sons. See, it's a pattern. It's a thing. They did that. I'm not sure when it stopped, but they did that. So he picked two Moab women to marry his sons. So he has Ruth and he has Orpah. And then in the story, all we read is that they get wives, and then the son 1 is dead, the son 2 is dead, Elimelech, dead. All the men are dead. And it leaves all 3 of these women. And Naomi, it says she is old. She is up in age because they were bearing children well into their later years. So maybe there are some good things that are not old Bible to new Bible, because many of us don't want to be bearing children in our old years. So they find themselves dead. So Naomi is like, all right, I have nothing to offer you girls, nothing at all. I have no hope of bearing you any more sons. Just go back to your family. Go back to Moab. You can find a life there. Don't go with me. I'm just going to go back to Bethlehem, and you guys go back on your way. And Orpah, she does. She goes back to what would surely be comfortable, where her family was, where her mother and father was, where she grew up, all that she had known. And then we have Ruth, who also would be comfortable going back to her family with the hope of marrying again, with the hope of starting a new life, because her husband is dead. And these husbands had to have died fairly quickly because there were no children yet. We don't know how much time had passed, but all the men are dead. And this is where we get that familiar passage in Ruth where Ruth says, you know, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. You see, Ruth would have been so much more comfortable going back to what she knows. She couldn't have even known her new family that well, but she did something that was so beautiful, is that she chose to get sticky with someone. She got so sticky with Naomi, she wasn't willing to leave her. She wasn't willing to abandon her just because times get hard or tough. She was making the trek with Naomi with no idea what the outcome was going to look like for her. Had zero idea that life was even going to work out for her, or that she would ever have another life beyond taking care of her mother-in-law. No hope of anything. Yet she doesn't go back to comfort. She chooses to stay sticky with Naomi and goes with her instead. And then the fourth squad that you need, and she's probably someone super familiar with you, and she's the adulteress. And she is in really Bad Girls of the Bible, although sometimes I wonder. And that's Bathsheba. She was the one that King David saw, wanted, knew she was married, sent for her anyways, and Bathsheba becomes pregnant. Her husband is off to war. So in an effort to hide the pregnancy, King David brings her husband back, and he tries to cover it up, and that doesn't work. And so then he tries to, another night, see if I can get him drinking and party with him. He'll go to his wife, and I can cover up the pregnancy. He'll think the baby is his, and that doesn't work. So then he kills him. He sends him out to war, makes sure that he's murdered, brings Bathsheba, and brings her as one of his wives in his kingdom. And then we have the fateful story that we read about and see about of how their child died, how they prayed and believed, but the child died. So here we have Bathsheba. At one point, she's happily married, waiting for her husband to come back from war, and the next moment, her husband is dead and she's grieving the loss of a child. For anyone in here that's a mother, can you imagine anything more awful than grieving the loss of a child? Maybe some of you in here have had to deal with that. But Bathsheba shows us something beautiful. It says that, and she would have had to have reconciled it out with God. It says David comforted her. They had another baby and they gave birth to Solomon. And it said God loved Solomon and he was the wisest of all wise. But we'll see something about Bathsheba. She could have just sulked about the child that she lost. She could have just sat in the kingdom thinking, I never belonged here in the first place with all these other wives. I had a different husband. My husband's killed. I've lost a baby. And at the end, one of David's other sons had set himself up as king. He'd set himself up. And if that was the case, then Solomon and Bathsheba were going to die. So instead of thinking about herself, at the end, Bathsheba had to get out of her comfort zone and step up for Solomon, the rightful king. And when she did, Solomon was crowned the king, and the other son is the one that died. But if she had sat back thinking only about herself, you see, sometimes you're going to have to be the type of person that's willing to step up for somebody in your life. Do the right thing, even when it might not seem like the comfortable thing. So what is it that all of these women show us? Or why these women? Why is it? You know what they tell me? These women tell me that no matter who you are or what you have done in your life, your worst is not too much for God. Your worst is not too much. So what are all these misfit, ragtag women who are foreigners and they've committed adultery and prostitution and all of these things in their life? What do they have in common? These are the four women that lead up to Mary. You see, there's a lineage of Jesus Christ in the book of Matthew, and it lists all of the men that take you from Judah to the next person, to the next son, to the next son. But there are four women mentioned by name before we get to Mary, and the only four, they all had wives. They all produced part of the lineage. They all bore children. The only women mentioned by name were these four women. The ones he mentioned by name were the prostitute and the adulteress, the one that was a foreigner and didn't belong in the new city and didn't even know God, Rahab, who had only heard of a God, and instead of choosing to go the way of her family and her city, she chose to trust in an unknown God and an unknown outcome, and not just for herself. You see, one thing that Rahab did when she was in there and talking to the spies, she says, "Tell me this, I will help you if you allow me and my entire family to live." And she gathered her whole family in her house because she trusted in an unknown God and an unknown outcome. You see, you don't know what your choices are doing for the people around you. The only people that walked out of Jericho that day, besides the Israelites, were Rahab and her entire family, and nobody else. Had she not trusted her gut, her entire family would have died. Had she trusted her gut but just did it for herself, she would have lived, but none of her family would have lived. You see, these women and all of the choices that they made that were in uncomfortable situations, because I guarantee when Tamar was putting herself out there with Judah, she was not comfortable. When Rahab gathered her family in her house and they're all like, "You're crazy. The walls of our city aren't gonna fall. Nothing's gonna happen." And she's like, "Listen, you guys have got to stay here with me. You've got to stay here with me." She could not have been in a comfortable position with her family. How many times have you had to stand up to your family knowing that you're right and they all think you're crazy, but you're standing your ground because you trust in your instincts that you're doing the right thing? And all of these women necessarily didn't know each other, but every single one of them was paving the way to Jesus because of the courage and the decisions that they were willing to make. So I'm here to ask you today, who are you paving the way for in your life? You're not paving the way for anyone if you're sitting back in your own isolation, worried about whether you belong, or maybe I don't fit in. You see, there's a couple of excuses that we'll use pretty easily when it comes to why I want to keep to myself. Number one is time. You're like, I'm already so busy. And if I get involved with you, what I kind of want to, but I really don't know is how much time are you gonna take from me? How much of an investment are you gonna cost me? Because here's the truth. We all live a life of hills and valleys and hills and valleys. And you can get involved in somebody's life and they can be up on a hill and you're thinking, yeah, this friendship is pretty good, nothing much here. And then they hit a valley. And you're like, whoa, I wasn't really prepared for this. And they're calling you at maybe inconvenient times. And they're requiring a lot of time. And what you really want to do is be home, on your couch, watching Netflix, scrolling through Facebook, because at least you know the investment that's going to take in your life, but you don't know about the investment with people. But you've got to be willing to give some of your time. And albeit, sometimes there are people who will exhaust you. There are people who will drain every bit of your energy. I like in Jesus Calling, because they have a portion of it, they call those people drain outs. There are drain outs in your life. I think of them as, the toy where someone is standing there and they're like on this metal spring and there's a head and you can push it and you can push it and you can push it. And when you let it go, it springs backwards. That can be like a drain out person. You can find yourself trying to pour all of your wisdom and your help and all of the advice that you have in this person, and they're like taking it and taking it and taking it and taking it. And the minute you stop holding your hands, they're back here. And then they're listening to your advice and you're like, yes, you need to see. Here's the thing with this person on the receiving end is you've got to be able to take godly wisdom and godly advice and put it into practice in your life. Or what's gonna happen is you're gonna be taking it and taking it and taking it and taking it. It's gonna spring back and you're gonna find that your squad keeps going and they're leaving you here because you're unwilling to move yourself. Sometimes you've got to take it upon yourself to take in what God has put around you, the squad that he's put in your life, and take that advice and move on with it. And here's why you need a God squad. It's the people in your life have got to be pointing you back to Jesus. You need people you can laugh with. You need people you can have fun with. But at the end of the day, you've got to have them pointing you back to Jesus. You've got to chase a God squad like your life depends on it. Or like if you're being chased by a spider, but either way, you're chasing it really hard. And it matters who you chase. I used to think that this was just a message for teenagers of like it matters the friends you keep. It matters the ones that you get in your life. But it's not the case. It's not just for teenagers. I've seen marriages ending. Marriages that have been long-lasting, ending because someone has been listening to the wrong squad that's been feeding them with the wrong advice and hasn't been pushing them back to Jesus. I see things like that happen day in and day out. So it matters the squad that you keep in your life. How would your life be a little bit different if instead of making the excuse of time, and instead of spending time in isolation, that you put yourself out there for a group of people? See, here's the other excuse you make is that I don't know if I really want to have a squad in my life because I might just be a little bit uncomfortable, because they might find out a little bit more about me. And then that makes me feel a little bit vulnerable, and my pride rises up and says, no way, Jose. I know what's there. What are they gonna think of me? If they know what I'm going through, are they really going to accept me? And it's the thoughts that the enemy is putting in your head. And if they stay there long enough, those thoughts will become truth in your life. And you will come to a point where you think you don't need anyone. But really, we're all the very same, going through the same things, the same hardships. Maybe it looks different or in different ways. We have this squad of women that are upstairs on Wednesday nights, a squad that always has an open door, mind you. But there's a group of women that gather up there that would blow your mind if you knew some of the details about this squad. We have a woman who was a rebellious teenager and wore an ankle bracelet and was on house arrest. I'd like to guess who that was. We have talked people through marriages that seemed like they were gonna crumble and they came back together. We've watched women who have watched their adult children going through divorce and the pain that they've had to deal with watching their children hurt. We've had multiple families that have sent children into the Teen Challenge program as we've cried and prayed and pleaded for our kids. It's a squad. You need a squad of people that are always pointing you back to Jesus. Because you know what happens when you get a squad like that? You're just nudging somebody forward a little bit in their life. It's not the big things that you can do. It's not the, hey, I've got this God advice for you and it's gonna change your world. It's the small things that you do in your life, the seemingly insignificant and maybe a little bit uncomfortable things to just put yourself out there for the benefit of another person. Cindy is here, and just this last week, she moved, and she's in a new place, and she has a new job, and she was struggling with a portion of her job, and she just was like, I don't think I'm gonna make it. She is not a person who cries, and she was tearful because she was just struggling with a person that was at her job that was training her, and it just was not working. But she knew she was in the place that God had for her, but she had no idea how it was gonna work out. This is not gonna work out. I don't think I'm gonna make it. And I remember sending her a text message that said, Cindy has not brought you this far to leave you. Just watch and see what the Lord will do. I don't know what it is, but just watch and see what he will do. And in that moment, I had no idea what the Lord would do, but I remember thinking, God, you've got to do something for her here. And then the next evening, she sent a message that said, they took the guy out. He's not training me anymore. He's gone. They took care of it. She showed up the next day and the problem had been removed from her life. Just watch and see what the Lord will do. You know what's amazing about that? It's not just that God came through, and this is what, when you do the small things that nudge people forward, it's for them, but it's for you. Because when you pour encouragement into somebody else, you feel encouraged by the words that are coming out of your mouth. And when you see it happen, you're like, wow, God, you can do that for her. You can do that for me. When you're pouring wisdom into someone about what they should do in their life or about pushing them in a direction for God and something that's good for them, you get wiser yourself because you hear yourself pouring that courage out into other people. And it's the small things. It's the taking time for messages. I found this beautiful thing I want to read you guys that really, I thought, signified the small things and how your small, seemingly insignificant steps are truly paving the way. You see, you have to be willing to do something small, maybe without ever knowing who you're paving the way for or who you're moving forward or why it matters. So there was this woman named Lil, and she had this friend named Morrow. And so Lil is talking to Morrow, and she says this. She says, Morrow, I suggest that you take the time out to attend this Bible class. And I thought, well, what is the need to go? This is a little bit older. We went to Sunday school, and we went to church. But Lil was honest with me and said, Morrow, I sense that there is a need for you to get down deep in the Word and see what God really has to say to you. She said, so I went, and I couldn't wait to get back the next week. The class had something I desperately wanted and needed more than anything else in my life. I just couldn't wait to get back. It made me really start delving into my Bible on my own, and I began to see things that I'd never noticed before. I found myself staying up late into the wee hours of the morning just to read my Bible, and the friendship and the trust that grew. I went faithfully to that class with those women for 6 years. This was written by Morrow Graham, the mother of Billy Graham. And I wonder if Lil, the friend, not the one that's telling her what she thinks she wants to hear, but the one that tells her what she needs to hear, is that I believe that you need to dig in deeper with the Word. Could Lil or even Morrow possibly have known that they, by growing their relationship with Christ, they were paving the way for Billy Graham, the one who would go forward and single-handedly probably lead more people to Christ than anybody in our generation will? Could they have known? But did she do it anyways? That's the kind of squad that I want to surround myself with. Someone who's willing to tell me not what I want to hear, but what I need to hear. Someone who is willing, when I feel stuck, that they can trust their gut and they can say, I think this is what you need to do to get unstuck. Someone who's willing to do the hard things. Someone who's willing to step out of their comfort zone. That's the squad that you need in your life. I found myself this last week, it was a couple of weeks ago, and I was staring at my computer screen. And many of you know that I'm writing a book, and I keep saying that because I have to put it out there to keep it feeling real for me, because I'm very uncomfortable about it, and I'm very unsure about it. And I'm convinced like 12 people will read it because they're in a class with me and they face me every week, and they're gonna have to be able to come back to my class the next week. They're not gonna be able to get out of not reading it, but I don't know who else will. And I was looking at my computer screen, and I needed to get these pages done for my editor, but I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden I'm sinking. It doesn't look any good. It doesn't make any sense. I can't say what to write. This is the worst that I've ever done. I'm not any good, and before I know it, I'm on social media, and I'm checking out everybody else's life that's writing a book or out there speaking, and they're doing way more than I ever could. And I am so close to hitting delete on an entire section, and I'm sitting at my computer and I'm just weeping because I'm sad about it, because I've invested a lot in it. But in that moment I thought, I can't go any further with this. I'm not gonna make it any further with this. And in that moment, as I'm hovering over my computer screen, my phone pings and I have a text message, and I wrote it down. This text message simply just says this: I'm praying for you this morning because I felt the Lord say, stay at it. I know it can be trying at times, but press forward to the mark because your dreams are coming to fruition. In the moment that I'm about to hit delete, a text message pings through on my phone from someone that I haven't even talked to recently or knew that I was doing that day. You see, here's the thing with the small things that you can do to nudge somebody forward in your life. It's because you have to trust that those things are coming from God. You see, only an enemy orchestrates something in your life to stop you from doing what you're supposed to do. But only an amazing God orchestrates a way for it to keep going, like as simple as a text message that nudged me forward, that were like an answer from God in the moment. And when I turned those pages in and I got on the phone with my editor, she said, wow, Lisa, I don't know what happened, but that was your best work yet. So heartfelt. And I thought, what an amazing God to keep your life moving forward, because he nudged somebody else to be part of a squad that helped you along the way. How would your life be just a little bit different if part of your goals every day were to wake up and see, can I nudge somebody else's life forward just a little bit? And when you do, that makes you part of their squad. You see, a squad isn't a group of perfect people. It isn't a group of people that have it all together. It's a group of imperfect people willing to allow a perfect God to work through them. A group of imperfect people who are willing. The only way you'll ever be any good for anyone else is to find some willingness in your heart to be nudged, to nudge somebody else to find the courage to do those things. I love that scripture in Peter that I read when I first started, and I like the Message version because it says this: most of all, love each other as if your life depends on it. Love makes up for practically anything. Be generous with the different things God gave you, passing them around so that all can get in on it. Do you know that you can't love generously or use your gifts if you're spending all your time by yourself in isolation? You can love each other deeply when you're a part of a squad. You can love each other deeply when you're generously sharing a little bit of yourself with the people that are around you. And I know, and I've served God long enough to know that I can look out here and see a multitude of people that need each other.